For my EDP project for Bio 181 Lab, I examined LED hue and wavelength impact on cinnamon basil seed growth. So for my abstract, for my purpose, it was which light hue and wavelength causes the fastest growth of cinnamon basil. For my design concept, I set up 3 pots with 3 different light colors, blue, red, and natural, and I wanted to see if plant growth would be affected. For my conclusion, the blue light caused for the fastest cinnamon basil growth, which overall determines that plant growth is affected by light hues and wavelength. My findings, the plant pot with red light grew the slowest overall, and the cinnamon basil grew the fastest with the blue light. My introduction, the scientific theory, does light hue and wavelength affect cinnamon basil growth? My groups, my control group was the pot placed on the windowsill with the natural light, and my treatment groups were the pots under the blue and red LED lights. Some background information, a control group is a group that receives standard or no treatment, and the treatment group is the group that receives the experimental variable, and cinnamon basil is an herb. My hypothesis, I hypothesized that the pot exposed to the blue light would have the fastest growth rate, and my scientific reasoning is because blue light has the strongest wavelength, which overall enables the most energy to be directed toward the cinnamon basil, which causes the best growth. The purpose of this experiment was to determine the effect of light, wavelength, and hue on plant growth. My methods. So step 1, I got 3 pots sized 4.5 by 3.75 inches, and they're filled halfway full with soil. Step 2, 10 cinnamon basil seeds are placed in each pot. Step 3, a blue LED light is hung over the first pot, a red LED light is hung over the second pot, and the third pot is placed on the windowsill. Step 4, you give 2 tablespoons of water to each pot a day, and you make sure that they receive the same light exposure, which calculates to be about 8 to 10 hours per day. Step 5, you measure the growth in centimeters with a ruler every Sunday, and you record it in the chart as well as take pictures. Specifics. This study was conducted at Bowen Hall on NC State University's main campus, and the study was conducted from October 26th to December 4th, 2022. My results. Here are some of my visuals. So from the first week, 1 to 4, I received no growth. But then after week 5, I started to receive growth rapidly in the blue light area, and it started to show in red and natural, just not as much. Then from week 6, growth increased in all 3 of the pots. It continued. And then in week 7, it continued, but at a slower rate. Here are some of my statistics. The red light, it went from 0 centimeters from weeks 1 to 4 to 0.4 centimeters in week 5 to 0.7 centimeters in week 6, and then 1.2 centimeters in week 7. Then the blue pot started at 0 centimeters, increased to 1.2 centimeters at week 5, 2.1 at week 6, and then 2.8 at week 7. And then lastly, the natural light started at 0 and went to 0.2 centimeters at week 5, 1.1 centimeters at week 6, and then 1.7 centimeters at week 7. My discussion. Was I correct? My original hypothesis of the blue light resulting in the most growth from the basil cinnamon was proven to be correct through this experiment. The results showed that the pot that was placed in the blue light had the tallest final growth of 2.8 centimeters as opposed to the natural lighting of 1.7 and the blue light of 1.2 centimeters. Some of the limitations of my project, only 1 pot was used per light, so a revision that I would make is to use 2 to 3 pots per light. Only 2 colors other than natural were tested, the blue and the red, so a revision I would make is to add other colors. Only 1 type of seed was used, the cinnamon basil, so I would revise it by incorporating other types of seeds. And then there are also a possible inaccurate measurements due to the ruler, so I would change my measurement to millimeters to have more specific lengths. So a comparison, my research, my findings showed that blue light resulted in the best growth over red light. Red light was not observed to have a more beneficial effect over blue light or natural light. Blue light has the strongest wavelength and produced the most and fastest growth, and then blue and red light did produce growth. And then other research showed that red and blue light were the most effective for plant growth, whereas yellow and green would have minimal effects. plants need red light because it helps them make chlorophyll. Blue light has a short wavelength and a pronounced effect on plant growth, and blue and red light are particularly effective at promoting plant growth. So pretty similar. My outcomes showed that light hue and wavelength do have an impact on cinnamon basil growth, that different light hues produce different effects on the plants. For example, blue light produced the quickest growth, but it also produced the most growth number-wise. And then the natural lighting produced the largest plant size, which is shown over here. My conclusion, what I have learned. From this experiment, I've learned that the dramatic impacts of light hues and wavelengths have on plant growth, particularly cinnamon basil, since that's the seed that I chose. I've also learned that different light colors have other impacts, such as the size of the plant growth and the amount of plant growth. Why is this important? This is important because red lighting indicates in the use for agriculture that it should not be used on crops if trying to achieve maximal plant growth. However, for blue light in results to agriculture, it should be used if trying to grow the most or fastest crops. And then natural lighting for agriculture should be used if trying to grow the largest plant from this experiment. And then these are my references that I referenced to when I was talking about other research. And thank you.